The air in the glass room felt too thin, like it had been scrubbed of oxygen and sound. The only thing steady was the faint click of the wall clock, cutting between sentences that didn't quite make sense together. My colleague was talking fast, numbers, projections, a joke I didn't laugh at, and yet, beneath the hum of polite conversation, something in me tightened. It wasn't anger, not yet. Just a pulse behind my ribs, a quiet warning. When he said he'd handle the CCs, I nodded. Small detail, harmless on the surface, but as his voice filled the space, mine disappeared. The next morning, I saw the email thread, the one that should have had my name on it, sent to everyone but me. I reread it twice, pretending I hadn't noticed. Silence was easier to defend than suspicion. The clock in that same room still ticked the next day, each second a reminder that I'd heard it coming before it happened. My gut had spoken, and I'd ignored it. I told myself it was professionalism, maybe it was fear. Either way, I let the noise win. For now. The silence that followed was deafening, louder than any confrontation could have been. I kept checking my inbox, half expecting an apology, half dreading I'd find one. It never came. Instead, I stared at the email chain again, tracing the neat sequence of names until the absence of mine began to look deliberate. Still, I told myself it was a mix-up. People forget things when they're under pressure, right? Especially him, ambitious, always juggling too much, desperate to prove he could lead. Yet something about the precision of that exclusion didn't feel like an accident. My old instinct, to smooth things over, to make it easier for everyone else, kicked in, but this time I paused. I replayed the meeting in my mind, the glance between him and the intern, the quick close of his laptop before I'd finished my sentence. The details pulsed like static, small but sharp. I didn't react. Not yet. Instead, I decided to listen differently, to the gaps in conversations, the hesitations before replies. The silence wasn't emptiness anymore. It was information. And somewhere inside it, I could already sense there was something worth finding. I just didn't know what he'd hidden. It started small, one file out of place, one meeting rescheduled without notice, nothing big enough to accuse, but just enough to feel off. Each week carried a new misalignment, a missing attachment, a conversation that ended mid-sentence when I entered the room. It looked like chaos, but it was too consistent to be random. That was the first shift in my thinking. Maybe my gut wasn't whispering superstition. Maybe it was cataloging. I began keeping a quiet log, date, time, anomaly. When the folder titled Q4 Review vanished for the second time, I didn't ask around. I went straight to IT and requested the audit trail. The technician printed it out, columns of usernames, timestamps, and IPs. His stood out, 3 edits past midnight, then a deletion tagged as archived. A week later, HR sent me their official meeting summaries. I highlighted each line where my presence was noted as optional. Each receipt calmed me. Every confirmation replaced confusion with clarity. What I'd once felt as unease was now evidence, pattern, not paranoia. It struck me then. Intuition wasn't magic. It was memory, sharpened by repetition, finally paying attention to what I'd already seen, control, disguised as calm. By the time dawn leaked through the blinds, sleep had abandoned me completely. The city outside was still half asleep, but inside my apartment, the air thudded with a slow, steady rhythm, my own heartbeat, calm but deliberate. I opened my laptop and stared at a blank page for a long time before typing a single word at the top, proof. The cursor blinked in silence, like it was asking if I was sure. I was. I began with the small things, screenshots of chat threads where my name vanished mid-discussion, calendar invites that shifted times without alerts, memos rewritten after I'd approved them. Each line I added felt like exhaling after holding my breath for weeks. This wasn't about revenge. It was correction through precision. I wasn't plotting to expose anyone. I was documenting the truth quietly, before noise could distort it. Halfway through, I caught myself wondering how many times I'd felt that same pulse before, the quiet signal that something was wrong, and ignored it. Have you ever ignored a sign you couldn't explain, only to regret it later? The thought landed heavy. The clock ticked once, steady now. I saved the file and renamed it with today's date. For the first time, I felt stillness instead of doubt. By Monday, I had rhythm instead of rage. While others filled the office with chatter about quarterly targets, I moved quietly, steady, methodical, deliberate. My first call was to compliance. I kept my tone neutral, just another routine inquiry. They asked for written context, so I attached my audit logs, each timestamp underlined, every edit sourced. Within an hour, they confirmed receipt and initiated a 14-day internal review. I marked the date on my desk calendar in pencil, waiting, not wondering. The next morning, I printed the entire email history tied to the missing project. The printer hummed. It sounded thin but certain. I signed each page, logged them into chain of custody, and sealed them in an envelope for records. No drama, just documentation. Around me, the team buzzed with surface energy. Too loud, too certain. Panic thrives in noise. Strategy breathes in silence. Later that week, I invited someone from legal for lunch. We ate outside, mid-spring sun, on metal tables. Between bites, I slid a folder across and said, "I need to know if this qualifies as exclusion or oversight." She scanned the papers, nodded once, then looked at me differently, like she'd just realized I'd stopped playing defense. That afternoon, an anonymous message appeared in my inbox. "Thought you should see this." Attached was a forwarded thread, every decision, every meeting, proving my absence hadn't been accidental. It was designed. The day of the meeting, the office felt unnaturally bright, the kind of light that exposes fingerprints on glass and tremors in voices. I asked for 10 minutes in a private conference room. When he arrived, he carried the usual confidence, shoulders squared, tie perfect, but his eyes darted to the folder in my hands. I placed it on the table without a word. The air between us hummed, half silence, half static. "I wanted clarity," I said. My voice didn't rise, not once. I opened the folder, sliding out the printed threads, the audit logs, the compliance notice. These show a consistent pattern: meetings, files, edits. My role wasn't overlooked, it was removed. The words landed gently, but left no room to retreat. He started explaining before I'd even finished. Pressure, deadlines, too many moving parts. Not excuses, just erosion. When he finally met my eyes, something gave way. "I didn't think you'd notice," he admitted, the sentence small, almost apologetic. "You make people nervous sometimes." It was honest in its own clumsy way, fear disguised as leadership. I didn't need to punish him. The evidence had already done that. I gathered the papers, aligning their edges precisely. My intuition hadn't betrayed me. It had warned me, and this time, I'd listened. The aftermath didn't arrive with noise. It came as quiet rearrangements. Project files shifted hands. A new name appeared on the leadership chart. Compliance scheduled follow-up interviews in neutral conference rooms that smelled of paper and sanitizer. People spoke to me differently now, too careful, too polite, as if my calm had become contagious or dangerous. The silence that once isolated me now cleared space. Yet underneath, a faint ache pulsed where satisfaction should have been. HR initiated their standard 30-day evaluation protocol. Every week, I received sterile updates, review in progress, pending confirmation. It was the bureaucratic rhythm of consequence, steady and slow. On paper, it looked like resolution. In reality, it felt like waiting for a wound to scar. I went through the motions, meetings, summaries, polite nods, but part of me wondered if justice always required this much stillness. He avoided my gaze in the corridors, offering half smiles that didn't reach his eyes. I didn't look away. There was no victory to savor, only the quiet proof that I'd been right. Control had replaced chaos, but control was colder than I expected. At night, I'd hear my own heartbeat again, steady now, unhurried, not warning this time, not fear, just the sound of balance slowly returning. He was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table by the window, stirring a cup that had long gone cold. The cafe was half empty, the air filled with low music and the scent of roasted beans. Outside, traffic murmured. Inside, everything felt suspended. He stood when he saw me, the gesture awkward, rehearsed. "I just wanted to clear the air," he said. His voice sounded smaller without the echo of an audience. I nodded, and Saturday, the pause that followed wasn't hostile. It was deliberate. He talked first, filling the silence with explanations, pressure, perception, the way success can twist into self-defense. I listened without interrupting. Once, I might have tried to soften his shame, to make him comfortable again. But comfort was how I'd lost ground in the first place. When he finally stopped, I let the quiet stretch until it became its own language. Then I said, I don't need an apology, I just needed the truth to be visible. The words weren't sharp, they were measured, final. He nodded, eyes fixed on the table, realizing that forgiveness wasn't part of the transaction. We finished our coffee in silence. Outside, a bus passed, its brakes sighing like a closing door. As I stood to leave, I noticed the calm inside me, no pulse of warning, no noise left to quiet, just stillness, earned. Weeks turned into months, and the office found a new rhythm, quieter, steadier. My name appeared first in the project credits now, black ink on clean paper, but I didn't linger on it. Recognition had stopped feeling like oxygen. It was just a record of what had already been true. The old instinct, to prove, to over-explain, still flickered sometimes. But I learned to let it pass. Discipline had replaced performance. One afternoon, a junior analyst stopped by my desk, anxious about a decision she couldn't quite justify. "It just doesn't feel right," she whispered. I smiled because I understood. "Then pay attention," I told her. "That feeling isn't fear, it's data your mind hasn't processed yet." She nodded slowly, relief softening her face. If your gut speaks, pause. What if it's data, not doubt? That single shift had changed everything for me. I didn't rebuild trust by demanding it. I earned it by staying consistent when no one was watching. The silence that once hurt now held weight. And in that weight, I finally found my balance again. Morning light spilled across the counter, soft and certain. I wrapped my hands around a mug of coffee, letting the warmth settle into my palms. The clock on the wall ticked, steady and unhurried, no longer a warning, just rhythm. For months, that sound had meant vigilance. Now it matched the calm inside me. I glanced at the folder on my desk, draft notes for a workshop I'd agreed to lead. Not about conflict, but about clarity, teaching others how to read the quiet, how to trust what hums beneath logic. The same stillness that once felt like isolation had become instruction. Past hesitation had trained me well. Future certainty was the result. They called it intuition. I call it evidence I learned to trust.